So thank you very much. First of all, let me thank the very vibrant and agile organizers of this conference, World Petroleum Technology Conference, particularly Dr. Garg for inviting me to be the part of this wonderful conference here. It's a challenge for the last session, but I think we have wonderful speakers here which will make it much more vibrant and interesting. But just to set the context in place, few thoughts, few remarks I think would be relevant. So I think we must recognize here, this is a very important topic on developing a global ecosystem, sustainable ecosystem, which encompasses many things together. And we must really recognize that the kind of industrial growth in the 20th century that happened, it saw a very rapid and irrational perhaps use of primary fossil fuels, energy sources, coal, oil and gas. And it's only recently, few decades back, that we saw that and that realization came in the world that emissions, pollution, environmental degradation are responsible for greenhouse effect and climate change issues, and for which the energy sector is a key contributor to climate change, accounting for more than 2/3 of the global greenhouse gas emissions. World, we know, is witnessing a tremendous kind of turbulence and a transition in the sector of energy. And there is a all-round attempts to move to a cleaner, greener, sustainable energy ecosystem. That there are many projections that have come in by renowned organizations, individuals and companies, which say that by 2050 the primary mix energy would perhaps comprise 50% of the fossil and 50% of non-fossil energy sources. If that is the case, then we don't have much time actually. We are already in the 20s here. And to achieve that, I think many actions need to be taken. We are all aware of the discussion in the COP26 and all, the action plan there. But the kind of projections and the actual data that is being presented in the world by many organizations, and particularly McKinsey study, which says that the world is nowhere near the 1.5 degree kind of a capping of the emissions. And we are somewhere around 2.5 or so, even more than that actually. So if we have to really achieve 1.5 degree emissions, for an oil and gas company worldwide, we see that many of our oil and gas installations, producing installations, have to be shut down. If we have to, and we see that many of the regions, EU particularly, has set very tough targets for themselves to achieve this by 2050. They say that, particularly in the automobile and transport, which is again a quarter of emissions come out of the transportation sector, they said that to achieve that, no more emissions emitting vehicles beyond 2035. So this kind of dramatic changes are happening. We need to recognize in our ecosystem, are we prepared for these transitions? Are we conscious of what is all happening? That's very important. As I said, major economies are laying plans to reduce environment footprints, 100% reduction from cars and vans by 2035, 0 kgs of carbon dioxide per kilometer target for vehicle manufacturers. These are the targets that are being set by, and they are following it. The important part is that not just setting the target, there is an action plan to achieve it, and I think that's what we need to really learn from that. So there is, in this context, there is an emergence of and really a focus concerted effort and emergence of low emission fuels, advanced biofuels, synthetic fuels using hydrogen and also captured carbon dioxide. Their focus is to really either convert it to methanol or any other renewable fuels actually, which can be used like any other. And there are several examples, like ExxonMobil, through its subsidiary Imperial, has set up a 20,000 barrels a day kind of a pilot plant, which would be using waste, plant waste, wood waste to produce that. And they are working on a bigger plant of 50,000 barrels a day, which would be commissioned by 26 again. The other companies like NextChem or Solar Energy are working on renewable diesels. So this is a kind of a circular thing that when you use certain fuels or energy form and there are emissions of carbon dioxide, you capture that, store it, and then recycle it in the form of useful fuels again. So I think that's the kind of thing that perhaps the world needs that. MIT research converting carbon dioxide into chemicals which can be used as a fuel, and they use a different kind of thing. Normally carbon dioxide is captured by amines, you dissolve it and then extract it and use it, but then if you can directly convert it to other fuels, that's perhaps the best way. Vehicle manufacturer Audi and MAN Energy Solutions, MAN is also a major vehicle producer, they have set up a plant of 6 megawatt at Welde, Germany, and I think our colleague from Germany can perhaps talk about that, which uses hydrogen and carbon dioxide in a methanation reactor to produce synthetic natural gas. Their second plant is coming up in Chile, which will be 550 million liters of a day, which will be commissioned again in 2026. So there are various initiatives coming up very fast world over. And what is it that's happening in our amidst that we need to be conscious that where we are actually there in India as a country particularly. So the societies are simultaneously working on at one hand energy services which are efficient, but at the same time they are looking at that they should not produce emissions or there is restricted emission production. And for that oil and companies have been able to deliver so far very efficiently the energy that is required today. The question is that they now face the challenge of transition to a low carbon emissions or nil carbon emissions. Will they be in a position to really achieve that? We know that the oil and gas sector worldwide is growing about 4% annually, but the challenge to my mind and the winners would be those who really focus on low emissions products or restricted emission products and devote their resources, the financial parts, and also their R&D work in the field of low carbon technologies, as also carbon capture, utilization, or even storage on that. And I think it is believed that no oil and gas company in the world, and I repeat, no oil and gas company will be unaffected by clean energy transitions. Every part of the industry needs to consider how to respond. I think that's very important, and I think our Indian companies, I hope, have taken note of that. There is perhaps some time lag when they recognize their issues, but I think in the race of really achieving, and particularly for our country, as we know, 2070 is the target for being a carbon neutral. We need to really act now to be able to really achieve that. So it is in this context, it is therefore very important and urgent to plan and execute a sustainable ecosystem which encompasses based on environment, social and governance issues that facilitate these initiatives. So one is the low carbon technologies to produce energy, then a system of consumption of energy which have minimum or nil emissions, where emissions are captured, stored and recycled. We also need to see that where we work, where we live, the buildings, which actually consume about 40% of the global average of energy and also produce about 1/3 of the emissions, are energy efficient on that. That's very important. So where we work, where we live, and how we transit, I think this all would be part of that ecosystem that we need to look at that. And I think for this discussion in these aspects, we have very eminent speakers here. I'm very happy. We have a diverse panel here. I'm happy there's an HR person also here who would come in, because for us, we need to really focus on the behavioral aspects of the people. To my mind, you can have the best of the technology, best of the processes, but whether the people are really follow it completely or not, that is the challenge actually. And particularly in countries like Asian countries like India. We see in Europe, whatever is said is actually implemented and followed by everyone. It is taken as a national goal. But I think we need to really focus on the behavioral aspects, which is very important. So I think with those remarks, I would request now our first speaker. Let me see.